Welcome back to the Apprentice One-to-One podcast sponsored by Schneider Electric. This week we have Darren Crannis, the ECA Technical Manager, coming to talk about his entire career and where he's at now. Check it out and get involved in the comments. Welcome back to the Apprentice One-to-One podcast. It is me, Mark, again, and I'm joined by a very special guest, a proper industry superstar, I would say, and that is Darren Crannis. How are you, Darren?
Hello, Mark. Thank you for inviting me. I wouldn't quite go superstar, but
no, well, I think you are. I mean, often we get drawn into this world of social media and influencers, and we all know who the big famous people are around that space. But you are a proper electrician superstar, I would say. And we'll start from the top for the reason why, by talking about your current job role. So, what is it you do at the minute, Darren?
At the moment, I'm one of the technical managers for the ECA, so the Electrical Contractors Association.
Fantastic. So, I mean, that means you're delivering some of the ECA roadshows of late around Amendment 2. We've all seen you on social media in your snazzy attire doing that. So that's why I'm pigeonholing you as a superstar, because lots of electricians will recognise your face from those shows.
It was a really exciting time when I joined ECA at the start of the year, because I knew the amendment obviously was coming up, and they had a fantastic program, and going out, especially after COVID, and especially over the last few years, even when I was a practicing electrician, there's lots of faces on social media you get to know. There's lots of people been dealing with in the industry but never met them. But to go out to these road shows and meet hundreds of people, and there's lots of contractors out there who we recognised and we had sort of photos with and we engaged with and we talked to, and it's just really, really exciting times. A shame it had to wait to an amendment to do that, but it came perfectly timed.
That's it. You walked straight onto the stage and took to it like a duck to water. I was going to ask you actually how that felt, standing in front of a room full of few hundred people and delivering that kind of thing. Did you find that daunting? I know when I'm speaking to other electricians, it's generally just through a camera on the back of a phone, or as we are now, a webcam, and very rarely stood in front of actual human beings. So how did you find that?
I literally had weeks for this, but we went through it in the office, and the team said, actually, do you want to deliver more than what they had me down to deliver? I said, yeah, sure. I had a bit of a background when I was younger in performing arts.
Oh, right. That's going to help.
So that's going to help. There's a bit of a joke at the ECA when Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat comes on, because I sang in that. So I'm used to an audience, being kept in captivity in COVID, didn't do anyone any favors, but it's brilliant to be, in front. And I was always mindful that, several years before, I was the one in the crowd.
So you've been on a proper journey through your entire career, and we can dig into that by going right back to the very beginning. So how did Darren Crannis, the young school leaver as it maybe was back in the day, how did you get started in this glorious industry?
I think it comes down to, like, my granddad was in the electrical industry. My dad was sort of in a little bit of the M&E before he went down a different route, and there was just a bit of an interest there. My dad ran a scrapyard, and when you're young, you obviously can't do that now, but when you're young, there's lots of things to play with and break, and hopefully not break yourself. So there was always that tinkering mentality. Do you know what? I liked mechanical and electrical equally as much, and when it comes to sort of choosing where to go, I literally tossed a coin, because I liked them both. I wanted to do sort of mechatronics, both of them, but I went down the sort of electronic route. But I just remember when I was a 10-year-old kid, my dad taught me how to solder. Built one of those little solder cubes, which sounds really easy, but it's not. So if people look at how to make a solder cube, you'll work out why it's really hard to do. But we used to do those little sort of projects together, build a little power supply, put some lights on my Lego. I'm not saying we always got it right. Smoke alarm used to go off at my mum and dad's home quite a lot back then. But yeah, that's really, I guess, what sort of sparked my sort of interest in this.
Yeah, I guess that's a common story I hear a lot, and it's an experience I shared. Actually, it was my granddad who kind of got me interested into it. It seems to be the way that it does kind of pass through the generations. So when you were on that journey, did you do a traditional apprenticeship after you'd kind of first took your steps into the industry, or was you in other areas first and kind of came towards full-on electrician in things later on?
I was in other areas first. So I was sort of mostly education and went through electronic engineering, and then came into this sort of later on.
Okay,
I was always sort of, so I sort of came back, sort of after that sort of progression through sort of university, I came back into this.
Yeah, that's a similar experience. Again, to me, I was in electronics first, so mobile phone communications and things like that. And then I was lucky enough to get an apprenticeship as an older, well, I say older, it was still early 20s. And again, it's different for everybody. There are all these different debates about routes into the industry. I think the important thing is that we make sure we go on an equal path and we come out at the end of that with the qualifications we need. So when you were first into your proper role in the electrical industry, what were some of the first job roles you had? Where did you start your graft?
Oh, this was proper house bashing. This was, working your fingers. This was proper grafting. It was stand to think, making sure you helped, those, who were qualified around you. But I learned a lot very quickly. It was, it was making the holes in the wall. It was tidying up. It was, and then as you progress, it was, we're allowed to put a bit of containment in. And it was like that. But I remember, the guys who I worked with, two smashing gentlemen, and they were really big on doing things properly, inspection tests. But one thing they always did is, I can't remember, what time is Popmaster on Radio 2? Is it 10:30 or 10?
It's about that time, isn't it? We're showing our age here, but it's about that time.
I wasn't a Radio 2 listener, but it was, everyone stopped work at 10:30 or whatever time it was, and it was Popmaster. So you all sat down as a team. And after that, there was always a question on BS 7671 that he would throw in. The same thing happened at tea time, you see. So there was always that, the how and the why.
Yeah.
You could all be shown how to do something, but they would tell me the why. And that's what really, and so we had some great interesting, debates on this. And we were rewiring predominantly sort of old listed properties. These were big project, would last quite a few months, and there'd be a lot of guys on there, a lot of subcontractors at times. And yeah, it really was a sort of how and a why. And then they've done a lot of electrical inspection work. And of course, that's full of hows and whys.
Yeah, you learn a lot, don't you, on the inspection, seeing how other people have approached tasks and essentially trying to pick out some of the problems that might be inside all of that is a good way to learn, I think.
Yeah. I mean, especially back then, electrical inspections weren't big. In fact, test inspection wasn't big in general. We do so much of it in this country compared to others. It's really good to see. People think we don't do enough. We do a lot more than others. And even at times, I guess when people complain what little we may do, it's actually much more than others, from what I can see. But no one wanted to do inspection test work, and they done a lot of it. And that's why these sort of huge big rewires came up in thatched and listed building. And
the remedials off the back of it, I guess, was it?
Yeah, well, the approach they took as well was almost quite industrial. There's lots of steel conduit and singles. Sort of the Dorset model, as it's become known, was adopted. So it's quite intense.
Yeah, you've raised a couple of points that a lot of the apprentices would approach me about now to do with kind of the work roles they're given, and there is that acceptance that a lot of them don't seem to want to take on, that there is an element of cleaning up, doing the hard yards and the smashing and the bashing and the fetching and carrying back and forward to the van. You kind of have to earn your stripes a little bit, don't you? That's how I got my apprenticeship, and I think, like yourself, from the sounds of it, I had a good apprenticeship as well. It's that kind of that journey, isn't it? So if there are apprentices listening and you do feel you're a bit of a dog's body from time to time, it's just the journey you go on. I'm afraid there's no real shortcut to that, is there?
I've knocked through holes, knocked through walls, knocked through ceilings, knocked through roofs, dug trenches, cut open concrete. Do you know what? Even the young apprentices now, when they come to renovate their first home, there'll be a dab hand at everything. You don't just learn how to put a few wires in, you see.
That's exactly it. You've got to put the building back together again afterwards, haven't you?
Yeah, and that could be a task in itself, to be honest. But, a lot of firms will do that. So you do sort of learn sort of those general building aspects works as well.
Yeah, there's like all the trade skills, isn't there, that you pick up even to do with when you're cutting your containment and things, and the tools we have to use, they kind of cross over into different trades and different areas. So apprentices, if you are not getting the experience you need through the range of works you've been given at the start, don't worry, that should come later on. If you're towards sort of the end of your apprenticeship and you feel like you've been used as cheap labour, that's a different conversation, because that does still go on. Not everyone's as fortunate as me and Darren. I'm well aware of that. So
it is a big journey. It is a really big journey, because like I say, in the first few weeks, you do think, what are you going to do? Where's this going to end? But over the years, I doubt you sort of remember the first 2 or 3 weeks, because you sort of progress all the way through.
Exactly that. And when you're 16 to 20, 4 years feels like a long, long time. But when you're as old as I am, I won't speak for you, Darren, it's really not that long, is it? It's like a blink of an eye, really. So it will pass, you will get there, and the rewards come later on. So you went on a journey of your own through qualifying and training and becoming an electrician, and that sound footing that you've had there with your mentors. So how did your career progress after that? Did you stay employed on the tools, or did you form a business? How did you approach it, progressing your career?
This is a really, interesting point. And so we talked about, obviously, we went through those big projects. And this is probably, alert to anyone who does big projects. If you're not feeding the wheel, and as a business owner yourself, as an ex-business owner myself, if you're not constantly feeding that wheel, nothing's coming out. So we'd actually finish a big 9-month project. There was nothing the other end.
I see where you're going with this one.
Yeah. So it's one of it. So I was made redundant.
Yeah, it's a common scenario, isn't it? That's how these things tend to start.
And I remember this, and I thought, well, but what do you do? And so I spoke to oddly enough, I always speak to people outside the industry, not necessarily in my industry, to see what they've done. And a friend of mine had started a web business, and I asked, what do you need to do to start a company? Because my ambition always was to start a company rather than just myself, even though that company was one person for a while.
Yeah.
And we had a beer. It wasn't quite the £1 or £1.50 all those years ago. It was a bit more expensive. But it was, and I said, and he said, first thing he did was speak to an accountant. I thought, that's really good. So I spoke to him, saw how, he was obviously electronic. I'd known him through my works for the telecoms industry, and he was into software. So I said, look, what did you do? They said, well, running a business is, pretty much running a business. So he said what software he used for his accounting and quoting. He said what accounts he used. So I had a meeting with an accountant, and I let the accountant do what they were good at. They done all this for me. So they started, what name would you like? And we talked about this, and actually worked out that having a limited company, for me, it may have not been the same for other people, but having a limited company for me and having me as a director in that was going to be better in 7 or 11 years than it would have been just going a sole trader. I think it's just my ambition to grow.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. And I remember my startup costs for that year, clear as a bell.
Go on, what they?
£26,000. But you don't spend it all in one go.
No.
But it's amazing what you do. And I do remember, my startup costs in year one were £26,000. But
when was that? What year was that, Darren? Just to give context to people with inflation in mind.
Okay, 2011.
Okay, so it's a good while ago now. Then 11 years ago.
Yeah, April. So I started the business on the tax year. So I had a couple of weeks off and started it on that tax year. It just worked out better to go sort of April 5th to 6th, for a rolling year. So that's what. And I went contracting.
So you were working into other contractors as a subcontractor?
Yeah, just as a subcontractor. So, been all through that pain of CIS and starting up, So I done that, and that's what I done. And what I found was I was subcontracting 5 days a week. Then I was subcontracting 4 days a week, 3 days a week, because I also joined a networking organisation. And there's many out there, and I won't talk about which one, but it was a aggressive organization that can, you put the right amount of effort in, you'll get lots out.
Without you saying who it is, I know who it is.
You know who it is, okay? And it might only be a profession that only has one trade or profession per seat. But even when I sold my business, they still have clients that I met all that time ago, because you learn, people like and trust. And that's what I did. And over an 18-month period, I went from 5 days subcontracting to subcontracting those guys in to us.
Yeah, that's such a common story. I mean, you've almost told my own story there. It mirrors what you did. A few years before that, it was kind of 2006-ish, but almost exactly the same. I think that's how a lot of people get into this industry. We're not business people, are we? And one of the big things we moan about as electricians is other people dabbling in our trade when they ain't got a clue. But too often we feel a little bit too comfortable dabbling in accountancy, dabbling in marketing and website building and things. And we do cross into areas of things we don't have the competence at. So asking for that expert advice is critical, isn't it?
Yeah. And I had a good network of people there, and it was brilliant as well, because I formed good relationships with other trades. And then we really sort of found out, what sort of niche markets, as we, because, when you start your business, you're doing everything. And then you find yourself into a good few little niches. And we managed to pick up some educational sort of works, and that grew and grew. So it sort of swung from doing a lot of domestic works to start with, over more into the commercial spaces.
And I imagine as you've kind of grown and gone from this contractor to a fully fledged electrical contractor in your own right, you had the issues of employment. You kind of grew your team. Is that what happened over the course of a few years?
That's exactly what happened. And I got to a stage where everyone has it. You are it. You're the talent. You're the business. You're everything. And you do your work, and then it starts out at maybe just do a couple of hours on a Saturday morning. That turns into half a day. That turns into all day Saturday. Turns into a couple of hours on Sunday. And before you know it, you've done 12 weeks working 7 days a week. You've helped no one, is the truth. You've probably made a load of money from it, and then you look at that and go, actually, this shouldn't keep going on. There's about a limit of what everyone can do. And oddly enough, I mean, that took about 18 months. But there was a local young lad in our village where I live, and he'd written to every single electrical contractor in Swindon where I'm based. And at the time, wasn't in a position to take on an apprentice, because, I was feeding myself with work. But I wrote back to him and thanked him for his letter, because, at what age, 15, 16, they've actually, taken the courage to write to someone. And I said,
many don't bother doing that, so good on you.
No, and I wrote back and said, and I've always done it. And since, that was the first, and I've always written back saying, unfortunately, at the moment, we're not looking to do that. But if you are interested in the electrical trade, I'd recommend looking at these courses. Now, he'd missed the level 3 entry course required for an apprenticeship. But I said, why don't you go and do a level 2, which is sort of, they call it full time, but it's like 2.5, 3 days. And it just gets them into waking up in the morning, going to college, doing some work, coming home. So it gets them into that right mentality. Before that year was out, I recontacted him and said, would you like to come along and have a trial? And effectively he become, the first apprentice.
So
he's still with the firm now. He's
really, I was just going to ask you if he's still there.
Man and boy. But it's great, because he was quiet as a mouse when he first came in. He's not now.
Yeah.
But I just remember, but then also the journey he had with me was very special, because he was my first apprentice, and the how and the why that I was brought up with, I endorsed that as well. But I do remember the first sort of few days and weeks, and I think we always have high expectations, and then just got to make sure what you were like at that age. Okay, so once you realign yourself, okay, and you really think, well, actually in their first year to start with, they're paid for work experience. So you got to remember back then, it's making you more efficient. Bring your tools. Why are you using your tools? Bring your PPE, pack your van, unpack your van. Give them a little list so they can talk to the wholesaler while you're there, just to give them those little sort of tasks, you see. But obviously he was my first apprentice, so we were both learning. And then obviously he's like the first employee that I've taken on. So again, we're both learning. That's a little phone call to an outsourced HR department to write contracts. So I learned how the apprentice system worked as an employer.
Yeah.
And then you learn all the things you need to do as an employer when you have someone working with you, the ups and the downs. Okay. But, there's a lot more ups than there was downs. So you go through that, and you progress them. And then they pop out the other end, they go down, do their AM2 and they pop out the other side. Brilliant. And this chap was at the stage where I'd spoke to the college and pushed him through early. I said, I don't want him because of his surname. Wait a minute, he wrote down the list. I said, I want him first because he's ready. I know he's ready because we're in such a variation of work. He was more than ready. And he was in the first batch. I didn't want to hold him back.
No, I mean, that's it. As the employer, whether they're ready or not better than anyone, don't you? And that's one of the reasons we have that checklist that we help them fill in.
It is. So we've gone through, there are times we say, right, bring your logbooks in and we're clear 4 or 5 sections of that in 1 week because we know we can catalogue all this work. We can let you do those things, take those pictures, call your assessor. We're local this week. Let's get them out. Let's get the college out. Let's, show those pictures and bits and pieces like that. Let's, have the meetings, let's progress you through. And with that, we talk about it. It doesn't matter when you start this career, as long as you follow the right path. We took on an older apprentice who retrained as a chef. And he'd sort of say, he didn't have a good deal in his going through his apprenticeship. And he sort of said, look, I've, don't have much commercial industrial experience at all. Well, I said, don't worry. It was all about attitude with me.
Yes.
We'll give you those tools. If we can't give you those tools, then, there's a problem with us. And he became a very good, test inspection engineer at the sort of end, so because he was used to doing sort of test inspection more domestically.
Yeah. I mean, it's that attitude thing, isn't it? Speaking with a lot of employers, that most people will say that as long as they've got the attitude to want to do something, like you said, we can give them the tools to enable them to do it through that experience. Such a good point.
That's the easy thing for an employer to give you effectively the tools is the easy thing. It's a willingness and desire to learn. If someone's a sponge, then we're just giving them as much information, tools to do their job as they want. We won't restrict that, or I never restricted that as an employer.
No, and like you said, with seeing their development, not just as electricians, but when you've got that shy kid coming in, I've had that with apprentices where they won't say boo to a goose, and then you see them at the end and these confident guys and girls, and they've got their own houses and lives building. And to know you've played a little part in that, it feels good, doesn't it?
That's a real special moment because we've always done some good projects, you see, and where we've been able to help, let's say when they buy their first homes, and when they first chat back to you, when you say, oh, can you go do that job? No, I do that. You go and do it. It's, they're ready. But it's great, helping people, set themselves up, you see, and they really do then, they're really welcome to that opportunity.
Yeah. And like you said, it's important for us as employers to understand we're buying into that training process. As you said, we do have that where they're doing fetching and carrying for us and the other bits and pieces, but we need to give them that experience. We need to have those discussions like you had with your mentors about the why, not just how we're doing this, why are we doing that? Explain that to them and set it against the regs, for example. It's our job as part of that training regime, isn't it, to make sure we do that.
Yeah.
So once you've built up the company and you've got your apprentices working alongside you and they're turning into qualified electricians, Where's Darren Crannis going after that? How's your career moving on as you move forward from there?
So what I had to do there is you start just getting bigger and bigger. And then you find out that all those years ago when I said I was working Saturdays and Sundays, you're working Saturdays and Sundays. And at the time, my wife Carrie was looking to change her career. And that's a good thing about, running your own firm. It's all about the family. You're making differences to lots of people, but including yours. And I said, look, why don't you come and work for us? We've got a contract. It takes up 90% of my time. It'd be better taking up 90% of your time, and I can focus on the other bits. I like doing the doing. I like going out. Used to love getting involved. You see, so that's what happened. So I brought Kerry into the business.
So you essentially recruited on an admin basis in that way, I guess.
Yeah, it was admin with contract management. Kerry had a wealth of experience managing as a sort of middle leader in secondary schools. She was technology based, so it was then to sort of come into that contract management role. And again, it's a bit like a few of us. No one goes out and finishes school and goes, I'm going to start a business. They go out, and then we all become accidental business owners. So that's sort of nice for Kay become an accidental contract manager. But lessons learned, become very good at it.
Yeah, and like you say, if you can divide and conquer your role in a way, so you can do the things you enjoy and grow the business, and Kerry's coming in and making her mark on things. And for those who want to hear Kerry's story, she's been on this podcast already. She's maybe 4 or 5 episodes ago. Go and check that one out, and she'll explain her journey into all of that as well. So once you've got Kerry there alongside you, and you're back out doing the do, I suppose, and your workload's back at 4 or 5 days, where are you going on after that one?
Well, I think it's always important. We talk about progressing other people's careers, but you get to a stage where you still need, I think, to progress your own. Okay. And it was I just had an opportunity where, if we backtrack to when I started the business, you sort of need to be a member. Well, you don't have to be. It's also a good idea if I say a member or customer of, should we say, a certification scheme or CPS scheme or a trade body or someone there to give you a hand, because I don't know everything. I didn't know everything back then. I certainly didn't know enough. And when I talk about obviously working with subcontractors, you'd see all the vans in the car park, and they'd all have certain logos on. Okay, and it'd be the normal one, NIC, it'd be that logo on every van, and then one just had the ECA logo on it. And at the time, I was researching, the how and the why, and I asked the one person, why is your logo different? Who are these people? Because even back then, I didn't know who the ECA were. I'd only ever seen one logo.
Yeah,
and that's but I know there's 26 other bodies you could be a member of. Okay, I'm not excluding any others, but I'd only ever seen one. And he said, "Oh, it's the ECA." I said, well, "What makes them different to the other 26 vans in the car park?" They said they help their members.
So that's what drew you to them.
And that was the word help the members.
That's something we hear a complaint of, don't we, in industry, that these things are kind of to tax us, and it's something we've got to do rather than choose to do. You make an interesting point there, that you chose to seek that out, that help.
Yeah, and that's what I've done. And I didn't know. I just you just ring them up and you ask them what you need to do, and true to their word, outcome information gets filled out. Got a nice little visit from a regional manager. Someone actually come to my home to see me, spoke to me, went through the paperwork. I then go to, I was in a Rotary Club, go to my Rotary Club, and I get a little tap on the shoulder. "Hello, Darren, heard you got an application in." I mean, bearing in mind, he says I think there's been discussions, a podcast with the ECA on it, which has talked about it's run by its members, and I didn't know that my application would go to the local branch in Swindon.
So it was reviewed by your peers in the ECA.
It's a comment, it's a comment by your industry peers if they've got anything to say about you.
If they think you've been doing a good job or not.
Well, it's not if you're doing a good job or not. It's any reason why not. So but these people, in my Rotary Club, it might as well be called the Rotary Club for Electrical Contractors, because there was lots and lots in there. And believe it or not, we always got on most of the time. And they said, "Oh, we look forward to." So I mean, that is what happens. It gets reviewed. You go through your technical assessment. It gets reviewed by the members in the local branch. And the next thing I know, I'm going to a branch meeting. So I'm invited to the branch meeting. I meet these and several others. And we go back to that time when I was still researching. You suddenly, you stood in a room full of hundreds of people delivering a presentation. Well, I think I was more nervous walking into a meeting with 10.
Really?
I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I'd heard the names. These are industry professionals that had a reputation for doing good business. And I just thought, if I can learn one thing off these guys, that would be amazing. And that branch support was really good. They said, look, Darren, we know you're new. If you need any questions, answering, any help, come to us. And I did. I really worked with that sort of branch, and the branch then goes, into the region, and that's sort of, after a couple of years of being in the branch and getting more familiar and more comfortable with people, I become branch chairman.
Nice. So that's quite a jump, and that's, like you say, you're putting the work in that gets you there, I guess. Getting involved, making benefit of it for yourself, but also to help others. And the reward of that is they put you in charge. They
put you in charge of the branch, but you get to hear about the local. You get to hear about the local problems, and that could be local good, local bad. It could be contracts that aren't being honoured. It could be wholesalers. It could be education. It could be all this. But you can talk about that, and then you can do your lessons learned. And I've always said that I've made hundreds of thousands of mistakes in the 11 years I had my firm. I always learned off the bigger guys because they would go through that pain. Of course, I didn't want that as a smaller company. So I'd always just learn what not to do rather than what to do. And, but from there, I went up to the region. So we have branches and regions, and I could take those queries forward to the region. And with that, it went up to national council. So, a lot of the committees, training committees, skills committees, technical committees, got to hear of problems that started off with one person in a branch.
So it kind of all feeds up that chain of command, and you're really starting to affect that change, I guess, when you're having those kind of discussions right at the top of that chain.
Yeah. So it starts from one or two people having a problem. And if they've got a problem or issue, they're only speaking for many. So that, it's not just one person with that problem. It's probably a bigger deal. And by the time that went up the food chain, we found out it was a bigger deal.
And that's when you can collectively deal with it, I guess, and you can take the reins on that.
You can, but you can, at the time, obviously I was a member, you can pass that on to the relevant people to look at. And again, it's through that I was asked to, by, a good friend of mine who was an ECA member, to make an application for the technical committee.
And would that still be on the basis that you were a member at that time? You can go onto that technical committee as a member.
Yeah, just a member. So years ago, it was called the Power Committee. Bearing in mind it's been running since 1901 and always in the same way. So it's made up of different committees of specialists. And it's the members who drive the organisation, you see. They drive what the departments do. And so again, I talked about being nervous in front of 10 people. I went to 10 people, and as confident as I might have been in my own right, you're walking into a meeting with the major players. Small, medium and large, very experienced. These are the guys and girls who sit on JPAL and other committees as well. So not only do you draw from your own experience, they've got a wealth of experience across many different standards. And it's amazing then how it all feeds in. But again, I thought if I could take away one thing, what not to do.
So you're learning at every stage of all of this, aren't you? Darren, right from the beginning with the house bashing, learning right to these technical meetings with the ECA.
To clone a phrase of yours, you don't know what you don't know. Okay. And it's amazing what I didn't know.
Yeah, it's a learning journey, isn't it?
And massive.
It must be, at that time, like you said, it's very daunting when you stood there in that room with those people who've been there doing it a long time, and you're the fresh face on the block coming with your ideas and insights into things. So, you know, full credit to you to take that on.
But again, you know, it's from lessons learned. We, you know, smaller contractors, medium large, you bring different experiences in. So where they may have a problem with large firms, equally important as those are small firms. You know, if there's products out there you can't terminate cables into, or you've got product problems, then certain people need to know. You know, you might install, or we might install at the time, you know, just say units of 1, 2, and 3s of EV chargers. Others might install hundreds, but it's the same product.
Yes.
And it's the same, you know, experience, same, you know, problems you may be getting. So, and, you know, if there was confusion with the actual implementation, shall we say, of the regulations, we know the regulations are regulation, but I always found as a contractor, how it's written, how it's interpreted, two different things. You know, you ask
about that recently. It's true.
You ask, you know, 10 different people, you get 11 different, you know, and we're all engineers, you know, and we've probably come on to this, you know, later on, but, you know, my experience of sort of looking at the other side now is much more valid, especially the contracting background. But what I always brought to the table there was, you know, this is not how it works in practical reality. And this is how, you know, the vast majority of people installing view this and see this.
Yeah, so you're speaking from kind of our side of the industry, if you like, if we're going to divide it up a little bit into the people who write the rules and those of us who work within them. So you're giving that voice to the discussion and that experience. So when you're having those kind of technical meetings, then does that kind of thing feed into the JPEL committees? Is that an instrument that works its way up that way as well?
Yes, hugely, and other standards. So when I was on the technical committee, I was quite fortunate. I was asked to sit on JPEL. There was an opening to co-sit on JPEL with another member on inspection and testing. So, you know, when you say go and put your big boy pants on, went and put the big boy pants on. And
so for those who don't know, JPEL is the body that come together to actually produce the regulations, don't they?
It is. A lot of people think that the IET writes the regulations. The IET don't. They administer it with the BSI, the British standards, and the IET. This is why it's joint. They are the committee managers. They govern the standards rules. It's the JPEL committees who take these regs and adopt them for the UK, as well as introducing new ones which are UK specific, because they come from the rest of the world and they come from Europe. So it's not the IET who make the regs, effectively we do, and contractors can, and they can influence that through the DPCs. And I can honestly say that every single comment is looked at, because I've looked at hundreds of thousands. But yes, so those, you know, technical committees certainly look at all that and then make proposals. So it's no good having an argument when it comes to the regulations, or if you want to influence it, and anyone can log on to BSI online and make a proposal today, tomorrow, at time of DPC, on any standard. It's not just 7671, it can be any. But if you just say, look, I don't like this, thank you. But if you say, look, I don't like this because the impact of this is it doesn't work in reality because of X, Y, Z, that's even better. And if you say, look, I don't like this because in practicality, this doesn't work because of X, Y, Z, and my proposal is perhaps you change it to this, you're on a winner, because that gets a lot more, because it's something tangible to look at.
This is the reality of a lot of these committees. Too often people will go on social media, and I've been guilty of this, and put a tweet out saying, this is horrible, that's a load of rubbish. Nothing changes apart from I've got it off my chest. If you actually feed that back, people will review and listen to that. I've seen it myself with the apprenticeship standard that's been reviewed now, and you see a lot of this stuff that it's pointless feeding anything back because nothing will change. That's just not true. You know, you've got to get those opinions in. Industry have got their ears open. Darren's the walking proof of it right now.
People, there's a sheet that will come out with all the comments on, and there's a little box, and it will say, have you reviewed it, yes or no? We don't have to give that feedback back because there's so much feedback. Okay, so it's impractical to give that feedback on an individual, but every single line is looked at, because you can imagine, especially with an amendment or a brand new, there's thousands of comments. They're broken down into the relevant committees, and every committee reviews them as a joint committee, and every comment is looked at. And if there's nothing with the, if you just say, look, I don't like this, then thank you, that's very close very, very quickly, because there's nothing we can do about that, other than they can note that people don't like it. If lots of people say we don't like it, and then someone puts a proposal there, we can look at that proposal. If everyone puts a proposal over there, we'll be doing a lot of work, but it's only going on what we're given from others. So the more meat you put on the bone, you're not going to be left with something the joint committee think is best. Yeah. And that's where my contracting background, I think, or we still think, helps, is saying on the coalface, this is the reality. This is how contractors are going to look at this, by the way. It's not how you think we're going to look at it. It's how they're going to look at it. And they will look at it like this.
Yeah, how the marketplace is going to view it and react to it is ultimately what's going to happen, isn't it?
And you've got to make it simple for people to understand. I mean, the great thing about, which is now the Brown Book, is we should be giving people, the ability and the license to make their own engineering decisions. It's a very, very good guide. And we should be given that ability for people to make their own engineering decisions, sound engineering decisions. We shouldn't be stifling that.
No, I agree. I've said that myself lots, that, having the ability to use engineering judgment is critical. It's how the trade's worked for decades, isn't it? And we don't want this, step by step, this is what you should do for this scenario. That's not what the regs is. It's not going to tell you how to pin your containment to the wall step by step, but it'll tell you how you should be erecting it and to what kind of regulations you need to keep in mind while you're doing it.
It's not an application guide.
No. Exactly right. And that's something that we need to get into apprentices' minds, that it's a book you use to guide you at the end of the day rather than instruct you, I suppose. So you stepping up and offering your input into that whilst you were still running your contracting business as well at that stage, or was you?
I was still doing.
So you're probably working 8 days a week at that point, I imagine.
Well, I think I probably it was nice because I was giving my time to the industry. So I worked it out. I gave 31 days to the industry whilst running my business.
Nice. That's a commitment to actually affect some help, isn't it? So good on you.
And then, one day the job advert pops up.
And you decided to take the leap out of the world of contracting and into the world of working on the ECA technical.
Yeah, if I could say, it was the most difficult decision of my life.
I can imagine. It's horrendous.
A business that I love, and Kerry spoke about. It was my baby. A business that you become emotionally attached to it. I know we spoke about when you start the business, you made it a limited company so you could do this. So I guess I was grateful for all that advice I took 11 years ago. But yeah, the job came up. It was well, like all interviews, it was challenging.
I can imagine, because what's your actual job title now? What's the job role you're doing?
Technical manager.
So yeah, he's going to expect you having a bit of a grilling there. Was it grilling on a technical level? I suppose they know your character by then if you've been in the ECA long enough.
Yeah, it was, and then also it was about my sort of life experience and what I'd bring. And I said, the biggest thing for me is 11 years ago, I spoke to someone and they helped me into the industry. They helped me through my apprenticeship. And then I spoke to someone in the car park and they helped me on board the ECA, and people's helped me along the way. And the ECA technical department helped me when I needed to. Okay. I said, if I can help contractors like you have helped me, then that's what I really want to achieve.
And then here you are now doing the do. How long have you been in that role?
It's since February, so just over 6 months.
And are you finding it's living the dream, or is it wishing you were back on the tools? You're
no,
not missing it.
I don't wish I was back on the tools. But it's really opened my eyes again, because I was looking for, something. The next stage for me personally was either, to grow the firm or to go into standards. And I really had a passion to sort of make that difference. And for me, maybe it's not about making a standard, it's making a standard easier. I don't think we need a great big long list of things to do. We can have a very short list of things we should consider. And that's what I understood that as a contractor, the pain that you can go through. And it's important to sort of take that through today. And like I said, now, we're dealing with many British standards. It's not just 7671, although that is a big bulk of the work. It's how it affects other standards as well. And that affects contractors. Sometimes, again, we're going to say you don't know what you don't know, is you can accidentally trip up into standards you know nothing about as an industry. There's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of growth, with the renewables coming in, that really is going into other British standards as well.
Yeah, and having the support of a group like the ECA helping us figure that out, like you said, keeping it simple gives us a better chance of actually being implemented by the contractors out there doing it.
A lot of my works when I started was learning how to put a snazzy waistcoat on and a jacket and present to you. But there's no point in telling you what's changing if we can't put any meat on that. And as a trade body, which I love, it's run by the members, for the members. What we're able to do is give you the honest opinion of what the yeses and the nos. We can give you, and you can make that decision.
Yeah.
So we don't have to dictate what the regulation is. That is the regulation, for example. We can give you both sides of the story, and then we can produce some guidance. And that's been the really fun part, is giving you guidance, videos, technical bulletins. So we digest that, we understand it, and then we put this information out for the members. So I think we've got something like 16 publications we've done on the back of BS 7671 for the amendment. So you're not, there's a slight change here, what does that mean? Here you go.
And that is exactly what industry wants. I'm not an ECA member myself, but I know of lots of them, and the feedback I've been given about the road shows and such that you guys are doing has been incredible. I think you kind of led the way in a lot of regards. They were certainly really, among the other CPSs.
Yeah, they were really fun, but it was great to see members there. And also, because they were so early on as well, we got some great feedback. And we take that feedback and we record it, and then we action it.
Yeah, so you're listening.
And we go back through that. We go back through that cycle. We'll produce some new guidance. We'll challenge JPAL. We'll challenge other committees. And, we'll try and get those answers.
It's an exciting place for you to end up, and it's living proof for any apprentices watching now of where you can go in this industry. It's amazing, isn't it, Darren? The opportunities that are there for anybody. You really can get yourself in all parts of the trade. You're sat there now helping us form the regulations and feeding back guidance and helpful stuff for contractors out there. 20
years ago, I was reading them. Yes. Probably doing a really bad job of understanding them too. But yeah, there's opportunities, for everyone. There's opportunities as you go through your apprenticeship. There's opportunities as you finish. I mean, we talk a little bit about Electrician Plus. When I had my firm, we went into a lot of inspection, testing, design, electric vehicles. I know yourself, electric vehicles. So there are those courses there available which allow you then to extend your skills. You've got the right skills levels that you've had through your apprenticeship, through your experience, and then you top that up with these specialisms. And we're in a really exciting time at the moment.
Definitely. You see in the explosion that we've got with the renewables that you've spoken about, and the EVs, and there's all the smart tech. A lot of the things that are coming in the pipeline seem to all be centered around the electrical industry, don't they? When you see on the news, a lot of the solutions for these problems we are providing.
And this is a real key message. It's our time. I say our time because I'm an electrician at heart, but it's your time. It's our time. It's the electrical contractor now who will lead the way on renewables and prosumer. There's going to be no gas. So, I know member business who completely changed their business model by adopting renewables. It's the electrical contractor finding the other trades and bringing them into their business. Someone to solder a bit of pipe, rather than the other way around. So it is the electrical. These stuff needs wires. It will always need wires. It needs telemetry. It needs integrators. It's a huge, big area, and there's something for everyone in that.
Yeah, definitely. You're dead right. And if you're on an apprenticeship journey now, you've probably got 20 years better than anybody's ever had, I would say, to have a successful time of things. It really is very, very exciting. And hopefully we don't have any, thing crop up and spoil that for us due to wider economic pressures. But, it's looking good, isn't it, I think?
Yeah, I mean, we're never going to say things are perfect. I mean, we are typically British after all, but the opportunities, I think, are absolutely amazing. And if you really want, if you really want to become a technical manager at the ECA and you're just learning your regulations at 16, then why can't you?
Too right. And based on your wide breadth of experience, and I called you a superstar at the start of this for a good reason, because of where you have ended up on the JPEL committee. How do you think we are set in terms of training for people now? How do you see that as a whole, if you like? As been an employee yourself, bringing an apprentice through, is there any improvements you think that could be made as Darren Crannis, the electrician, not so much Darren Crannis, the technical manager of the ECA? What do you think we might be able to improve a bit?
We've always known there's been a bit of a skill shortage. Many years ago, I went to an event with my local MP, and it was a big sort of show. And, people were sort of, I think, wanted to push people down the academic route. I was lucky I sort of done both, probably similar to yourself. And I said, look, you won't be laughing when someone turns up to your house to charge you £400 to change a light fitting. And he laughed. And I said, we've got no one. We had no one 10 years ago. It's getting better. I mean, I see it depends from region to region, but things are getting better, in terms of subscriptions to college. I know it's not the same everywhere. But I said, look, we've got no one. We've got no one here. And if you've got no one there, then you're not going to afford for someone to turn up and change a light switch for £400. And they sort of laughed. I don't think many are laughing now because, we're seeing a lot of change. And I think, coming on before, we've got the apprenticeship standard is always looked at, but it's out there for consultation. I think that closes possibly today. Yeah. And again, that's your chance to if we don't know what employers want, then we can't give you that. The domestic electrician apprenticeship is going to be a totally new one, and that's sort of soon or is up to running. There's been a lot of industry feedback on that, which we've been very grateful for. And again, it's not, to take it away from, I think you summarise this, it's not a 6-week course made into 3 years. It's just because look at a video on prosumers and see all the bits which need to fit together. I mean, we could make a 6-year apprenticeship. I don't think that will help many. All no. we can run a few different ones, and importantly have top up courses between. I mean, that's the really important bit. The fire industry, the fire and security industry has gone through now a good couple of years of an apprenticeship framework. So yeah, and we spoke about this just in regional meetings when I was a member, and we would say, look, we're not getting the support from the college, and we're not getting this. We went round the colleges. Go to, if you're an electrician, if you employ apprentices, or if you're just electrical contractor, go round your local college and then see for yourself, and then you'll change your mind because they're under extreme pressure.
Definitely, yeah.
And we all said the same. Look, we're not we're not getting the quality, we're not getting the numbers, we're not getting the people. The following meeting, we all said, when are we all going in to make a difference? When are we going in to drop a little bit of kit off? When are we going in just to spend a day, half a day, couple of hours talking to them, terminating with them, doing some bits and pieces? So as much as we like to moan, we should also go and do that as well. Everyone's under extreme pressure at the moment.
Yeah, they are. And like you said, the training centres out there are really, really struggling, from anything from materials to labour to actually run the courses. It's, yeah, it does need attention, doesn't it? Because like you said, we need these skilled workforce of the future. We need to provide the job roles for them and the training mechanisms for them as well.
But again, it's like what we said, if you're hungry for information, all of us can go and make a difference, can't we? The whole thing about, if you send an email to everyone asking for someone to do something, nothing gets done.
No, that's true.
So you can take the initiative and go out there and do something, a little thing. And often it's time, isn't it? It's time. Most of these things are at very little costs other than your time, and just a bit of time with someone can sort of really help them.
It could. And before we close this one out, because I'm conscious we've taken up an hour of your time already, just to speak about your employer hat and taking on those apprentices, is that something that you're glad you've done? You've seen the benefits of that for your business before you left?
Oh, huge.
You'd recommend it to other employers, basically? Yeah,
huge. I think the construction apprenticeships are some of the best out there. They're built for everyone. Even to this day, the firm continues and has taken on 2 new apprentices.
Fantastic.
Which is great that the apprentices that I trained are now helping to train.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Apprentices. So it's a self-perpetuating system, really, isn't it? That you can just keep growing and growing, and it's great to see, those guys being trained. I think you'd struggle in any other way in this industry other than a good apprentice route. Yeah,
I agree. Is there anything else you want to discuss while you're here today, Darren? Anything you want to mention?
I don't know. I think we're all good.
Good stuff. I want to thank you for coming on and taking the time to speak with me and share your career journey. If anybody does want to reach out to Darren, I'll pop a little link to his LinkedIn profile. I guess is probably the best place to direct him.
LinkedIn or Twitter.
His Twitter account as well. I'll pop that in there too.
On there, so,
you'll often find me and Darren locking horns discussing technical issues over on Twitter. And as I often say, when I'm doing that, I'm testing out my own ideas more than I am anybody else's. I think that's a brilliant thing we could all do as electricians, is kind of respectfully debate against each other without falling out. Because you're just testing your own thoughts and ideals on that.
We have those discussions all the time. It's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's about actually listening. And, I do listen on those social medias because, again, that's another feedback mechanism to the industry.
Definitely is. If you're an apprentice out there, don't be afraid of getting involved either, because I often get some DMs that, I would like to piped up there, but, you guys are also experienced and I don't want to start getting shot down. But, just get involved in those chats. Put your head above the parapet.
Why not? We're not all good. I think we've gone past the days of shooting people down. We said every question is a valid question.
Too right. And on that note, I think we could end that one there, Darren. Thank you very much for coming to join me. And for those of you who want to drop questions in on the video, I'll look for those dropping in and get some replies back to you. For the people listening on the podcast, please give it a rating in the review section if you could. It helps it spread further and wider. And until the next time, we'll catch you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Apprentice 1-to-1 podcast, sponsored by Schneider Electric. Please like and subscribe to the channel, get involved with the comments, and we will see you on the next one.